I'm Martin Warren, and for the next 10 minutes or so I'm just going to give a short presentation on decimals. Contents of this presentation will cover converting decimals to fractions, converting fractions to decimals, some common decimals, and recurring and repeating decimals. Here we have a number. It's got a decimal point. 4 numbers are to the left of the decimal point and 3 follow it. So the question is, what is that number? And you probably remember from sort of early school days that we talk about columns, and in the columns we have different units, tens, hundreds or thousands. And then if we move across to the right, across the decimal point, we got tens, hundredths and thousands, and we can continue in both directions as far as we want. So moving from one column to another column, we're either multiplying by 10 if we go to the left, or dividing by 10 if we go to the right. Therefore that number, if we read it as a proper number, is 3,521.483. Therefore the decimal part is 0.483. Decimals to fractions. When we look at the decimal part of a number, the first decimal place represents tenths, the second decimal place represents a hundredths, a third decimal place represents thousands. So you can convert a decimal to a fraction by putting it over either a 10, a 100 or a 1,000 or even more, depending on the number of decimal places. You can use your calculator, but it's fairly straightforward to just do it in your head. So to convert 0.4 to a fraction, we've only got one decimal place, therefore we're only dealing with tenths. We drop the 0 and the decimal point and we write 4 over 10. And then we reduce that to its lowest form, both 4 and 10 divided by 2, we end up with 2/5. We wish to convert 0.08 to a fraction, we've got a value in the second decimal column, so that's 8 over 100. Again, we can reduce that to its lowest form, 2/25. And finally, we've got 0.875. We wish to convert that to a fraction. The rule is, as before, write down 875. We've got 3 places of decimal, therefore we write 1 followed by 3 zeros and reduce it to its lowest form, which gives us 7 over 8, or 7/8. Converting fractions to decimals is fairly straightforward. You divide the numerator by the denominator. In other words, you divide the top by the bottom. So to convert 1 over 2, a half, to a decimal, divide the top by the bottom. 1 divided by 2 gives you the answer in decimal straight away, 0.5. There are some common decimals that you will recognize as fractions, such as 1/4, 1 over 4, 0.25, 1/2, 0.5, 3/4, 0.75, 1/8, 0.125, 5/8, 0.625, 7/8, 0.875, which we just had a moment ago. And so if you get a decimal like this, it completes in 2 or 3 decimal places. Unfortunately, some fractions do not convert to nice finite decimals. We have what are known as recurring and repeating decimals. 1 over 11, for example, converts to 0.09090909, and it can go on as long as you wish, all the way to infinity. 1 over 9 is similar, 0.11111, all the way to infinity. Very often you denote that you've got a recurring figure by putting a little dot as a superscript after the last digit. 1 over 6, 0.1666. I've written 7 here because I decided that we have enough decimal places and I rounded up the final digit. But if I hadn't done that, it would just go on and on and on. Likewise with 1 over 7 or 1 over 3. Or another fraction or another decimal you might be familiar with is pi, which is 3.1415927, and it just goes on and on all the way out to infinity. So when you're dealing with decimals that do not convert to a finite number of places, you have to decide the number of decimal places you wish to work with. It might be 2, 3, 4, depending on the accuracy of the work you're doing. As there are numbers, it can be put into order. We know that hundreds are greater than tens, tens are greater than units, ones, etc. Ones are greater than tenths, tenths are greater than hundreds, etc., etc. So when comparing numbers, always compare the leftmost number first. So here we have two decimals, 4.501 or 4.499. Well, 4 is the same for both of them, so we're looking after the decimal point. We've got 0.5 or 0.4, well obviously 0.5 is larger. So 4.501 is larger than 4.499. It's easier to compare and order decimals than it is when working with fractions. Note that if you add a 0 to the end of a decimal, 5.4 becomes 5.40 or 5.400, it does not change the value. You will sometimes see this when you're working to 2 or 3 decimal places to show that the number has been rounded to, if it's 5.40, it's been rounded to 2 decimal places. When working with decimals, you can do a lot of work in your head or on paper, though calculators make things easier. Calculators are set up for working with decimals, but if you wish, 4.56 plus 3.01 you could do fairly easily in your head. Likewise, subtraction. It gets a little bit trickier when it comes to multiplication or division, but that's what calculators are for. It just makes life a little bit easier. In this short presentation, I have covered how to convert decimals to fractions, how to convert fractions to decimals, some common decimals such as 0.5 representing a half, and recurrent and repeating decimals such as 1/9 equals 0.111, which just keeps on reoccurring, and pi, for instance, is 3.1415927, and that just goes on into infinity. What you need to decide is how many decimal places you wish to work with, and then just stick with that. Thank you very much for listening.